got Michael Soroka by way of Blake Moeller. So we had her on a couple weeks back, pro volleyball player, 𝗬𝗏, and she referred us to Michael. So a little bit about Michael. Recently pitching in the National League Division Series for the Cubs. Longtime pitcher, came up through Atlanta, first round draft pick. We'll make sure I have everything right here. But spent time mostly with Atlanta, but also the White Sox, the Nationals, and most recently with the Cubs. And now he's back home and taking the time off. So we just talking in a few minutes before we got started, doing a little golf, getting kind of settled. And he was kind enough to be here today. We're just going to get right into it. Michael, how are you?
I'm great. Great. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. So right off the bat, we're gonna assume that all the teams you played for, they all have the best fans. Okay. If you could pick a group like, hey man, this is wild and fun to play in front of this home fans all the time, anywhere in the world, but probably in the pros right here. Which fans are just the most fun to play in front of, and they're pretty interesting, good time, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean it's something that comes around the league quite a bit when we talk about that. Guys, you travel around, you play in visiting stadiums, and everybody kind of knows that Wrigley Field is kind of on its own a little bit. I think the consensus among most players is that a day game at Wrigley um, is as special as it gets, as well as a night game at Fenway in Boston. There's just something about those older stadiums that have character. I think there's some older stadiums out there that were just kind of built to put people in, and that's it. But Wrigley Field and Fenway both have so many special attributes physically as well as historically, and they've done a good job of kind of keeping them up. I know, people flock there just to watch them. I mean, people travel even if they're not Cubs fans. They travel to watch their teams in Chicago. It's a special place. So I think I've never got a full salute going out to warm up for a start until I was in Chicago. The Cubs. I get out there and I have the whole section in front of me yelling at me, letting me know they're behind me today, and uh, that was a really really good feeling. So uh,
For sure.
yeah, I think the Cubbies are.
So I grew up in Cleveland. I'm a Cleveland Indians fan, and so I'm a big homer for them. But I was in New York for the swim, and like I had to go to Yankee Stadium just to check things out. I would absolutely go to. I'm not a big fan of the Cubs. My wife loves the Cubs, but they beat up on my Indians in Game 7 a few years back, so I'm still hurting about that. But I would go to the Cubs game for sure. I'll go to Fenway. I've been to San Diego and a few others, but great, great time. Is there a place where when you're pitching, you're like, oh man, the fans here, the away team, they can kind of get at you a little bit. They can get in your head a little bit, or they really bring a lot of noise or a lot of energy when you're at the away games. Any thoughts?
There's definitely some fan bases that try. The Phillies fans are notorious for being definitely
Rough.
the most colorful. Uh, and part of it is the visiting bullpen is literally it's basically on the concourse, right? So they've actually kind of cased in the bench now, so there's a glass
They're
wall
safe.
at least when you're in the bullpen. You're good, but if you're starting in the one, you're out there, and you hear some funny stuff, and I think that's the best way to take it. To be honest with you, is just kind of see what gets thrown at you.
Yeah,
You definitely hear some stuff that might cross the line, but I have a job to do, and not in my job description to get mad at somebody and get out of my game. So
if you watch College Game Day, they got people with signs in the background all the time, and it's really just trying to be funnier or more, original. So I think if you're on the field and you take it like, hey, that guy's trying really hard, good for you, buddy. But here I go. How about I had I can't remember his shoot. This has been over a year. He's the strength coach for the Marlins, and I asked him, hey, when you're in these different towns, all these different restaurants, all these different places to go where you can eat, any of these five-star restaurants, any of your favorite places. And he goes, well, all the restaurants in all the cities. He goes, honestly, my favorite place to eat is in the ballpark at Yankee Stadium. I couldn't believe it. So right, so if all the places you go, Where's the food at? If you have, some free time, you're definitely go get some food somewhere.
Yeah, I think he might actually be referring to the clubhouse food inside Yankee Stadium
Right.
because the clubhouse food, at places like that is always quite good. But as far as restaurants and stuff like that, I mean, Chicago's still pretty hard to beat. I think a personal favorite for mine is Maple and Ash. That's one that I'll get to on an off night, every once in a while. They have one here in Scottsdale too, but I think the original is over in Chicago, and it's phenomenal. It's always
So you came from Canada, and I was just there for the second time in my life. I was just there. I turned 50 last year. My wife asked me where I wanted to go, and I said I wanted to go to Banff. And
nice.
so we flew into Calgary, so we went to Banff and Yoho and Jasper, and just spent like 10 days just seeing all the things. So coming, your first round draft pick, and you're working your way up, and you're in the pros. What's your metaphorically your welcome to the pros moment? You're like, oh shit, this is real. This is different. I know you're working your way up, but there's even your first day in the clubhouse, but there's got to be a moment where you're looking around and be like, holy cow, like look where I'm at. What was that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have two couple of them, and the good one not until you get to the big leagues. To be honest with you, it's kind of anywhere in the minor leagues is pretty similar. There's definitely good places to go, just like in any other league. My first so when you get drafted in your high school pick, you end up going to the complex site. So basically, have everybody come in there, uh, and then a lot of the college guys will break to short season, and then typically the younger guys will stick around. But I signed pretty late because I still had to finish exams home in Calgary. So I finished that and I went down to the complex site for about 3 weeks, which it's backfields, it's like spring training stuff. And then they sent me off to Danville, Virginia, which is the Happy League at the time, no longer exists. Professional baseball, at least. I think it's college summer ball now. But they had my first road trip. So my first game there was in Bristol, Tennessee, and the locker rooms were basically just a concrete floor with chicken coop for lockers, like chicken
Wow.
coop wire. Yeah, and so that was kind of the first one, and like there's no pregame food. I think they might put out a loaf of bread, some bananas or something, and
Wow.
that's kind of how it was. And it's gotten much better, and it's partly why they trimmed the minor leagues. But that it was kind of like, yikes, this is what I signed up for, and the other side of looking at the best D1 programs in baseball, or in the U.S. at least, is you get treated really well at a lot of those universities, and thankfully for football, a lot of those nutrition things are in place, and the food hall card and all that kind of stuff. So you get treated quite well. So I was seeing all that and seeing the option to go to college, and then realizing that you get to the minor leagues, and the lower minor leagues especially was what it was.
Lower.
Yeah, and you kind of obviously the talent is there, and the talent is high, but it's as far as living standards and whatnot is a grind. So I think for me, I got there and I realized I wanted to get going. I wanted to move my way up, and I was probably a little bit brash about it, more than I needed to be. I was 17-year-old, and I was in a rush to get to the big leagues. That's
That's the deal.
kind of back, and that's how it was. But that is ultimately what kind of kept me in line. Had me doing everything I needed to stay healthy and get to the big leagues as quick as possible. So yeah, I think kind of just kept that through my minor league career until I got there, and then yeah, I'm not sure in the big leagues. If there's ever one true moment, I think it's probably my debut. And you look around and it's exciting, but you're kind of in such a place where it's a little bit
Focus.
surreal, right?
Yep.
You kind of just walk on clouds. I'd pitched quite well that day, and through the fifth, I hadn't given up a run, so I went out in the sixth inning. City Field. It was in New York, and it was pretty. I don't know. I started to settle in, and I was like, all right, this is what it is, and I'm good to go. And then I hung a slider, and 𝗬𝗎 hit it in the second deck, and then I heard then the crowd came to life, and it
Right.
was like, oh, they were, that's what that feels like, and you can kind of feel it in your chest. I don't even think there was that many people there. I think it was probably three-quarter capacity or even less. You can feel that roar, and then all of a sudden you're like, this is the big piece.
Yeah.
So,
And they're not cheering for you at that moment.
right, and that's where, and to be honest with you, pitching on the ring, that doesn't really bother me, because a lot of times it's louder and you have more adrenaline out there because they want their hitters, because they're cheering for their hitters, but it's just
Right.
noise to me, right? So yeah, it's definitely probably that one, and playing in stadiums like that, it feels like the big leagues, and that's why I kind of said about Chicago. So when you play there, it's like, this is the show.
This is a
This
show.
is as good as it gets. Uh, This is special.
That's good. That's awesome. I could empathize with what you said. My daughter goes to Alabama and just studying engineering, and a few years into it, she walks on to the rowing team. So now she's a D1 athlete as a rower, and she's like she calls me with how they're treated. She's like, we're rowing. We're like, no one, there's people don't even pay tickets to come watch. Like, there's no revenue, right? And the dining hall, she's just showing us this and all the swag and how well they're treated. And when my wife and I go down there to visit her in the spring semester, we always go to at least one baseball game, and it is a lot of fun, man. There's beer in the stadium for in a college. They got walkout songs for everybody. Everything's going on. Everything's brick, and it's beautiful and great food. And I'm like, this is just college baseball. It's not even the pros, And I'm like, dang. So I could see, like, here's how one half lives, and that single A ball could be quite humbling, but also keeps you quite hungry.
Yeah,
You gotta believe.
yeah. And now, like I said, they're doing a much better job of taking care of their guys in the minor leagues, because I think they realize that, what, these prospects are the future, and we can put in a tiny little bit more money and being fed properly, at least. And I think thing was huge as well for them. And when I came up, part of why I signed was because of the opportunity with the bonus, and I got a good bonus, and I live the way I needed to just focus on baseball. I didn't need to worry about, I was going to pay for dinner or rent. Like, when I came up, it was $1,000 a month, give or take, $100 or so, depending on the level you were at, the pre-tax. Yeah,
Dang,
like guys that didn't get a bonus, like I said, you're at the mercy of the team, and they're living 7, 8 guys to a house, sleeping on couches, and yeah, that's just not
that's
the
rough.
best way to treat your investments if you believe that something. So, yeah, so
That's the way it
interesting,
goes.
interesting to change the.
I have a funny but sad story. One of my brothers, he studied broadcasting, and his first job out of college was with the Wilson tobacconists out in Wilson, North Carolina, and they were called the Tobs for short, because down in Tobacco Road where they grow a lot of the tobacco fields. Single A ball, so all the players lived with families in town, and he was an announcer for the team, so he lived with a family too. And he calls me one day and says a bunch of guys got kicked off the team, and I'm like, what happened? They go play, and they might practice the next day or hit, or like, what did they do wrong? And apparently some of those guys were banging the wives where they were living. So that went pretty bad, and they got kicked off the team pretty quickly. And, he did 1 year of broadcasting and decided, you know what, I'm gonna be a school teacher instead. And so it was one and done for him. So not good, not good. I had a question. One of the things that I run a gym, and we work with student athletes. And at a younger age, 10, 12, 14, if they come in, we're doing very basic stuff, farm boy stuff, carrying things, pushing sleds, sandbag, nothing technical, right? And once they're getting a little bit older, junior high and high school, we want them to lift more. Some of them will lift with the high school, some come to us to supplement, some of them just only come to us. And with all the travel ball that younger kids are doing, whether it's volleyball or baseball, softball, basketball, whatever, and on up, I keep telling them that the volume that they're doing on their body is quite a bit, and they need to build themselves physically to handle the load. Otherwise, they're going to develop some imbalances and then get injured. ACL tears, Tommy John surgery, um, all sorts of problems, right? Can you speak at all to the value that I've been told pro players will lift on game day sometimes because it's a lot of games. You got to get your lifts in somewhere, or in college, like just the value of keeping some things in perspective where you're working on your craft, but you're also doing the strength training to help bulletproof your body against injuries and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I wouldn't necessarily compare what we do
Sure,
to that,
but
especially because you talk about volume, and if you're out there playing every single day, it's just about kind of touching the strength just to keep it. So you're doing it just enough to maintain, or even just drop a little bit. For them, the focus is on practice. That's why you need to stop playing games at a certain point. The one thing that definitely helped propel me in my high school class, and then as well as early in pro ball, was that I was very lucky to find a really good trainer. His name is 𝗬𝗏𝗶𝗹, and then took on 𝗟𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗀𝗀 up in Canada. They were at the Olympic facility, and they trained Olympians, and um, you know, Chris actually ended up going over to train. He was the Rays. He was the minor league coordinator with the Rays for a little while. Took jobs in sports, but I think he's a head sports guy for the Flyers as well. So I got lucky. I got to work with these guys. Um, they got to put me in a place starting at 15 that you know built the right blocks for me. But I got about 5 months in both of those off seasons to truly just get better at moving. When I say moving, and a lot of that for me was strength. That came pretty quickly, and I fell in love with that, and then I went too far with it, and then I started moving like that. And, then you start compensating in the other direction. So that's kind of the biggest thing, and like a note to myself, if I could tell myself something out of the past, would be always focus on movement quality. It doesn't mean you don't have to focus on strength. It's just the quality of a full range of motion, and especially for baseball, is extremely important. I think you're starting to see the mobility aspect and being strong in end range mattering quite a bit more than just raw overall strength. In this game, I've watched players. Let's take Ronald Acuna for example. He's not overly. He's big. He's not small, but he's like I'd say probably 6 foot 210 ish, maybe a little bit more. He's hitting balls as hard as anybody in the game, including guys that are well bigger than him. He's stealing balls as fast as anybody in the game. And at one point before a couple of the knee injuries, he was running just about as fast. So I think watching him and the elasticity that he plays with and the range of motion that he was able to work in allowed me to realize that it's a little bit more movement quality, but nevertheless, you need time to work. And that's where, like you said, trying to do both at the same time just doesn't work. If you're in the gym trying to get bigger and stronger and then going to play a game, you're shot. You should be shot. If you're really trying to gain strength and you did enough sets in
right,
your legs, you shouldn't be able to play a game to the best of your capacity because then you're just
you're
kind of
ta-
swinging yourself in both directions. So I think taking that time off, and it doesn't have to mean like completely away from the sport. I'm not saying I need to take 5 months away because I didn't either. I was with the program last season. I hit the cages. I took ground balls. I threw a little bit. It's still just a focused move to let's get a little bigger, get stronger. Again, I wish I probably did it a little more gradually, but it's kind of how it is. And at the end of it, I got to jump into pro ball and be definitely the most physically capable high school kid in my class with the Braves, and lifting similarly to how the college guys lifted, and they've been doing it for 3 years. And so it was kind of a step ahead, and that's what we're seeing again here. And I see it all the time on whatever it is, whatever social media I'm cruising through. I see it. I see high school kids mid upper 90s. They're in the gym. They're moving properly. They're loading their hips properly. They've learned all these skills from the revolutionizing that has been happening in baseball over the last 10 or so years. But really, honestly, the last couple of years, I've been learning it for myself. But that's where you see it on social media. I see these kids doing the stuff that I'm learning now, and that's ultimately how progress happens. I think you see these kids all the time. I think there was kids in a draft class that did throw hard, but not as many as there are, and that's where they're learning how to do it. Whether their bodies are ready for it or not is another question. But they know that it gets looks, it gets them paid, and gets them good opportunity at the next level. And I would be doing the same thing in their shoes. So I think that the best way to do that is to be able to focus on one thing at a time and taking time away from the sport to get better at moving and get stronger. There's a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you made a number of awesome points. One, you want to be moving correctly. Like we can do some quarter squats and some half range benches or whatever, and some weak lunges, but then you're just grooving some bad movement patterns. It's like throwing poorly or swinging poorly, right? And you're going to get the most out. You're going to get the most power, the most strength, the most velocity by moving correctly. So focus on that, obviously, for sure.
If we see, sorry, in baseball in particular, and for anybody listening, why that is everything happens at end ranges, especially pitching. Pitching 100%. You look at some of the ranges that we get into, and you're using your entire body to basically pull a band back as far as you can,
Yes.
snap it and let it go. And you no doubt have to be strong and stable in all of those positions, but you have to be able to get there. And that's again a mistake that I made early on, was doing, you want to call it half range reps or lower range reps that were, held at weights that I could handle at, if I went to 90 in a bench press. But then you realize that when I throw, my pec is a complete stretch. I would be better off cutting the weight in half and working in just that range, whether it's for an isometric, whatever the time under tension needs to be, but and then working at basically underweighted stuff, so moving super fast. Figure out. I think that's really important too. But yeah, you're right. You groove those back patterns, and it gets really, really hard to kick them. It's a lot harder opening it back up after you've tightened it.
But you made some bad, gruesome habits. So, if you have to be at a full stretched pec when you throw, even like a straight bar bench might not be as optimal than just using dumbbells where your hands are below your chest and you get a further stretch. Or if you're a football player and your hands are in really close, a regular bench press might not be as good. Maybe like a Swiss bar or a duffel or a bar where your hands are neutral. So it kind of translates a little bit better. You do need some raw strength. Like if you can't squat and bench the bar, you're probably in trouble, right?
Of course.
But what I tell people, I remember we had Anthony Schlegel on. He played football in the pros and played for Ohio State, and he was a coach. And he was a linebacker, and he goes, "I just want to be so strong that I could hurt people." And I'm like, but then he also said, I had a 700 deadlift, and to play football, I definitely did not need a 700 deadlift. I needed to check the deadlift box to a point, but then once that box is checked, you just maintain it, and then you work on something else, whether it's mobility or velocity, speed deadlifts or whatever. But you want to have those main boxes checked to a point. There's no need for him to deadlift 700, and there's no need for you, Michael, to deadlift 700. You want to get to a decent number, but then you want, like, strength is great, but power and velocity matters more, and they go hand in hand, in physics. So you get force is still mass times acceleration, right? But you got to have the basics. But then after a while, maintain that base strength, and then maximize power and velocity and speed.
Yeah, I think too that you got to be able to apply it, and that's where we see all the time. You watch, there's a podcaster slash, that personality is Dr. 𝗦𝗶𝗶𝗹.
I love him.
Yeah, and he's funny, he's great, um, but he did a Navy SEAL training like day or whatever. It was basically trying to pass the Navy SEAL test, and he obviously picked up the weight all right, but you watch him do the broad jump, and it's like, oh my goodness, this guy can't move. There's no ability to apply that type of movement. You watch guys like, I think of some of those physically imposing, like Miles Garrett, like a body like that. And I think what makes somebody like that so intense is that they can jump through the roof, they can run, and like you said, the velocity picks up, and then all of a sudden the mass moves. But
It does.
mass moves slowly isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
You watch him move, and it's a different
Different
game.
animal. Different animal.
It's hard. You can't quite just get there just by picking up big weights. There's a lot that goes into that.
For sure. And it's quite the specimen, what he can do. I talked about in my chapters, like on the book or dealing with people, about incrementally moving the needle in different habits, whether it's their mindset or recovery, nutrition, being a better teammate. Like you can be a better teammate, help your team win better, coming back from injuries, the recovery or strength, anything like that. Talk a little bit about habits and being consistent all your way up through school, but now you're in a profession where everything matters even more, and how you can't just be intense a few days, weeks, or months of the year. How you got to stack wins consistently if you want to build any kind of asset like yourself.
Yeah, I think loving it is most of that, and that's why we pick something that we gravitate towards things that we're good at, and then obviously picking something that you love and eventually kind of get obsessed with. That's the best way to do things, right? Because then it's something that might look like work to others, but feels like play. That's something that is talked about quite a bit. If you're lucky enough to be able to find that, no matter what that is, I think you're in a good place, and that's where, for me personally, I've loved doing it, especially when I feel good. I think the hardest days are when physically I'm not there, run into a wall, and then all of a sudden, I can't do what I love because I just don't feel good. Knowing that line between, all right, I gotta keep pushing through that wall because I'm just, a little bit overdoing the same things for so long, or is it, no, I'm actually tired. My CNS is fried. Done way too much this week. Just eat enough. It's knowing that line when you can kind of just pull it back a little bit or push harder. That comes with experience, but I think loving it's what's kept me into it, and that's when I'm in a situation right now. I ended the season. Unfortunately, I missed a little bit of time this season at both ends. But there was a couple of things that I really, really wanted to work on at the end of the year, and throwing bullpens the last 3 weeks, which is the first time I've ever done that in my career, throwing at the end of the season because I had some stuff I really wanted to work on, and it's been the most fun I've had throwing in my entire life, to be honest with you. And that's because yeah, I feel good, and it's fun to throw when you feel good and it hurts. Um, but there's things, and I can see the progress wrapping up, and I think that's another thing that I was just kind of addicted to is progress. Yeah, just kind of it just stacks, and it's easy. It's easy to wake up and go do something that way. Again, it doesn't feel like work because at the end of the day, it's going to make something that's pretty easy to do. Yeah, I think consistency aspect matters a lot, but it's the quality of reps. Again, if you're gonna get good quality reps in, a lot of times just love it. You're obsessed with it in a healthy way, I guess I would say.
Yeah. 𝗟𝗲𝗶𝗹 would be asked by his buddies to come play, and he goes, "Well, I will be there in a minute. I want to work on this." Or even like Axl Rose, his buddies will allow him to come play with him outside too. And he's like, "Well, I'm working on this thing on the guitar first." And so enjoyment's a core value in that. If you really don't like it, you're not going to be able to be like well-rounded and healthy for coaching like adults. But you have to really love it because there's things that really suck. Single A ball, where there's chicken wire, right? There's things that, or if you have to gain weight and you're force feeding, so you could be, because you're burning through a lot of calories depending on your sport. A lot of times that's not fun, but if you love what you're doing, you won't hate it as much because you're focused on the end product.
Well, the fun part, though, like you said, the force feeding isn't fun, but stepping on the scale every week and seeing it go up another pound or two,
Right.
that is fun. And
Yes.
just for me, success like that fuels progress, and you feed off of one another.
Yes. Tim Grover talks about not loving the work, but loving the result, and that helps fuel you when you're suffering. I want to be respectful of your time, so we always end with some rapid fire questions, so that just go really quick. When you're training, what do you listen to?
Usually some form of metal, if I can.
Okay.
We actually don't listen to music, but when I'm doing stuff, or I get the hops in the weight room, typically some form of metal. Usually not too crazy, but yeah, I'm in on that side of things.
What's a bucket list adventure that you haven't been on that you'd like to try, whether it's climb down in the Grand Canyon or go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower? What's a bucket list adventure?
There's one that I wanted to have planned, and it was kind of a road trip around basically Central Europe, and then also a road trip around Scotland and go play some golf. Kind of figured I'd rent a sports car and drive around Scotland. Just enough room for a pair of underwear and a golf bag, and I'll be good.
Put a pair of underwear in your pocket, and then put the bag in the back, and then go see play golf and see the castles at night. We'll assume baseball is your favorite sport. What's another sport you love to watch?
Hockey. I grew up playing hockey. I played that
Got to, right?
10 years before I decided to dive into baseball. Yeah, it's tough sometimes during the season to keep up with roster moves and all that kind of stuff. When I go home to Calgary, I'm always at the Dome a few times in the off season, so it's always a good one to watch.
Awesome. Favorite athlete to watch, any sport, and they could be retired or dead or current, doesn't matter.
Oof.
You can name a few.
You know what? I've always said this because I think everybody is kind of, at least in the ring, a Mike Tyson fan. I went back during COVID when I was actually rehabbing my ankle, and all his fights are on YouTube, so you can go get the ESPN broadcast and kind of put it on and feel like you're watching a 1986 ESPN broadcast. So watching him, I think I was kind of just interested in his story and how he came up and the life that he grew up in, and you always hear stories about the way that he trained, and I think watching him in the ring is most outlandish and just different than a lot of other things, and I think we all like to watch that. Obviously, in our sport right now, 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗀 is doing things on a weekly, nightly basis that have never really been done before, and I think people are getting tired of hearing that,
right?
Because they're just tired of hearing how good he is. But it truly is. I had people that had watched and were at that game in the NLCS when he hit 3 homers and struck out 10 plus guys, and it truly, I think, probably the best single game in baseball history, let alone postseason. Stuff that doesn't happen in Little League. I hit multiple homers in a game a couple times in Little League, I don't think I struck out 10 on the other side at the same time. And that's when you're just like, he's doing this on the best of the best. Yeah, it's kind of that Mike Tyson when he was in his prime, he was still hungry. He moved like nobody else. And you could see the fear in the other fighters. They were the best fighters in the world. And they didn't want to be in there. They didn't want to be in there very long.
Yeah. He would bob and weave a lot differently when 𝗀𝗏𝗃𝗀 was coaching him. And to your point, Sun Tzu said every battle is won before it's ever fought. Those other opponents trained hard, but they knew what was coming at them, and they basically knew that they weren't going to win.
Well,
And you could tell.
You could tell too when he unified the belts, and he went through some issues, sports and stuff like that. But he never got hit. All his way, all the way up until the unified belts, he never got hit. And that's when, like you said, when Cuss was a coach, it was always defense first. You're going to learn how to get missed. And then all of a sudden, I think he figured out that he could take a punch, and he started getting knocked around a little bit, but it didn't matter because he's got the size 21 neck, and he said, "I can take a pitch. So I'm just going to stand here and just
wail on people." Yeah,
and that's when guys started clipping him a little bit, and went downhill, and that's when again. But
things change.
It was as different as it could possibly be.
Who's your favorite? You have a hero, and it could be fictional or real life.
I think typically it's my dad, who's he's shown me a lot of things, and so we've been through a lot together, and I think he's typically the one. But I think in a broad sense, now looking back on it, I would have said a long time ago it was 𝗦cije𝗰𝗶𝗹, which was the goaltender in Calgary at the time. But I kind of idolized him for who he was on the ice. But actually, the guy, you see it right there, 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗀.
Oh, I see him. Yeah,
he was a captain in Calgary for a lot of years, and he kind of exemplified what it was to be a true warrior on the ice. He did everything. He's honestly one of the last types of players that was actually, fighting on a semi-regular basis and putting the puck in the net, being a great teammate, hitting, making assists, making plays. He really did everything, and off the ice as well. I swear I got that picture signed. He ran a camp that I went to all the time, and who he was for the community of Calgary, and just larger than life he was. I guess that would probably be my number two, right behind my dad.
How about a villain that you like?
A villain that I like? What do you mean?
Some people like the Joker and Batman, or like some
seriously?
people like Bane, or I like Darth Vader. I like Darth Maul too. So
Yeah,
my favorite's probably Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
Okay, yeah, I think Bane's a pretty easy answer typically because I don't know, he didn't seem as crazy as some of the other ones, and was just kind of again victim of he came to be. But yeah, I think that's a special one. And Bane, I'm trying to think of any other ones. I mean, Spider-Man, Venom. I loved Venom. It was, and even before the movies, when those came out,
It's funny.
I was like the Venom aspect of Spider-Man.
You got a book you could recommend?
In what area?
Anyone, up to you.
I think one of the best ones that was a really good start for me was "Ego is the Enemy" by Ryan Holiday.
Ryan Holiday, yeah.
Yeah. He's come out with quite a bit since his last couple I haven't read. That's one that kind of got me going down the whole what do we call it, path and stoicism and all that kind of stuff. That one, and I think that's a really good start. Kind of all-encompassing. I think everybody can relate to that. So that's probably number one for me.
Beautiful. You have a quote for us or no?
I actually have one hanging in my kitchen. I had one framed. Um, Basically, what it says is, we can't ever get to a point where we're thinking of ourselves as living some great story. That we have to, continue putting in the work and the quality that got us to this point. And I think that's pretty applicable. It has been throughout my entire career because I could have said at every moment that I've made it. And you get to that point where you realize that what I truly love is the competition and the progress of being an athlete. All the other things that come with it are amazing, and we're very lucky to live in a time where we can be rewarded for such. But that one for me, I think, is again always applicable.
Yeah, Kaizen is a Japanese term. It's one of our core values. We're looking for improvement in all areas, just incrementally, small amounts, but relentlessly. It never lets up. I know. So you're not with Chicago, and it's not quite clear where you're going to be next fall, right? So, where can people find you if they want to, follow along, whether it's on social media or whatnot? Where can people check you out?
I've actually been pretty dark. I just re-downloaded Instagram. I gotta say a thank you to the Nationals and the Cubs for this year, but yeah, I kind of got
Which
off
is
social
okay.
media for a little while, and it's good, nice to
Probably
learn.
don't miss it.
I think I'm going to use this sporadically, but Instagram will be where everything goes. Uh, so they'll be able to find me on there.
Okay. And for those that want to continue sending those questions, info at athlete-builder.com. Michael, thanks for taking the time. Thank you for the gift. And thank Blake for referring us. It was helpful. I had a great time, learned a lot. I think our listeners are going to pick up some things. I told the guys I was training today that are baseball players that I was recording with you, so they're excited to hear about this. So you're making an impact and passing things on, and I'm very, very grateful for the gift. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
All right. Best of luck.
Thank you, you too.